So hello everybody. It's great to have you all here, and just before we start and we go around, each of the participants and see what each one add to this new ecosystem. Just a little bit of background of the subject. We all know that often innovation, or let's say business innovation, comes actually not from eventually something completely new, but by combining technologies in a way that is easy to use by someone else. And and this is what's happening today with the combination of VR, visualization, and eye tracking. So I think most of the people in the room will know that it's not new. VR visualization has been used for 30 years or so in the industry. Eye tracking, I don't know the exact history, but 20 years plus, and Mattias will tell us. But what's new is that for the first time are coming to the market the first product, which is a VR headset, including eye tracking, out of the box, in a mass market format. So it means affordable, easy to use from developer perspective. So suddenly it opens applications. So we are going to look into that, and what we wanted with this panel is to be able to, by bringing experts from each of the field, to be able really to share what we think, our view, what it happens, but also to interact, to be able to get any question you can have. So I'm first going to go around a little bit on the panel, so that each of the member can introduce their company themselves, and really look into the technology, the applications, and so that we can interact and really open that subject to any discussion on the applications. So I'm Hervé Fontaine. I'm heading the enterprise business development for Vive in Europe. And yes, in this morning, for those of you that could wake up a little bit earlier, so I was happy to announce that we're having today on demo what we call the Vive Pro Eye, so including eye tracking. That is on demo on the booth of Immersion. So anybody has time, please go there. It's quite stunning what you can see. So first I would like to introduce now the different panel, and we're having Mattias from Tobii, a specialist in eye tracking. Samuel from more the advertising world, and he'll tell us what eye tracking means for him. And we're having Jerome from Unity. So Mattias.
All right, hi. So I'm Mattias. I'm a global product manager at Tobii Pro, and Tobii is the world leader in eye tracking. And Tobii Pro, we're the part of Tobii that do eye tracking to analyze human behavior. So we do hardware and software meant for understanding human behavior in different contexts. It can be both in the real world or on the PC, and now latest in VR. And then we also have the part of Tobii Tech that develops the technology, algorithms done to measure your eye tracking, and works together with companies like HTC to integrate eye tracking into the commercial products. Yes, and I will talk a bit later about the different use cases we have for eye tracking already, but we've been around since 2001, so eye tracking is not a new thing for us at all. VR is just the latest thing, like new way to use eye tracking and how to show stimuli to your participants and do research.
Thanks, Mattias. Hey everyone, so my name is Sam Huber. I'm the founder of Admix. We are a startup based in the UK and the US, and our vision is to empower developers, content creators to be successful by giving them access to a new business model. We think that today making money with VR and AR is pretty hard, and so what we're trying to do is helping them actually generating money The business model that we chose is advertising, but the way that we do advertising in VR and in AR is very different from what you would expect. So we're not talking about intrusive pop-ups or banners or videos, but what we're trying to build is actually a product placement solution. So the idea is like you can place brands within your world in a way that doesn't intrude or interrupt. A banner on a wall, a video playing on a screen, and very soon a 3D product like a can of Coke or even a HTC Vive virtual item within the experience. So yeah, this is what basically we're doing. We're now a team of 20 people. We recently raised about $2 million, and we're very excited to be here.
Hello everyone, I'm Jerome MAUREY-DELAUNay. I'm a solution engineer at Unity. For those of you who don't know us, we are one of the biggest real-time 3D engine currently available. Our focus is on content creation, operation, and monetization of real-time 3D. We have an ad network that serves many of our developers, but also other engines like Unreal or Cocos 2D. Our services are usually agnostic. Obviously, our engine is specific to our platform. The team I belong to is the industry team that focuses on the industrial use cases for Unity. So this is architecture, engineering, construction, transport, and manufacturing across Europe. So any of you that use Unity and are working in those sectors are welcome to engage with me after this panel. And yeah, so we are very active, obviously, on the ad front. We are always welcoming third-party developers like Tobii or HTC to develop SDKs for our engine and make sure that we have the proper APIs in place to support our developers and our hardware partners.
Thank you, Jerome. When you look at combining eye tracking and in a VR headset, you come into quite a number of different applications. But to help categorize, let's say you can place that in kind of 3 groups. So the first application, and you'll probably see that developing quite fast, is actually improving the graphic quality. So this is most of the time called foveated rendering. So basically, by knowing exactly where you're looking at, you prioritize the processing power to render very, very well this part, and you deprioritize basically peripheral view. And this is quite stunning, actually, what you can achieve at a fairly marginal cost. Another category is for analytics. So, imagine, for example, a store. So, a typical large consumer brand trying to, define where to place on the shelf the product best. In the past, what were you doing? You were doing mock-up stores and having real consumer, walking in mock-up store and then, trying out. And now, actually, by simulation, you could, by knowing exactly eye tracking, you can actually simulate a lot. You can very quickly iterate in your store design process, for example. So that's really analyzing and doing something with it. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about what the implication of the do's and the don't in data protection, as one of the speaker was mentioning this morning. This is where there is something really important to take care about. The third category is actually into a user interface, because once you can really track where you're looking at, you can actually use that for visual command. Something where we probably never pay attention to that, but in VR we're very used to teleportation. If you are a user of VR, then you point, but actually where basically you look at where you want to go. So you could simply look and trigger that you want to teleport there. Well, so that's just a small example, but really using the knowledge of what you're looking at, how long you're looking at, how you're staying at it, to actually create completely controllerless visual command is also possible. So that are kind of 3 big categories. And there are a lot of things that could be in between and so on. So, but in order to structure a bit the conversation, I thought I would set the scene a little bit. And Mattias, you and Tobii have been in the eye tracking business, particularly with VR and without VR, for 10 years plus. And your company is very reputed, has a great reputation, particularly in the scientific world and so on. So, could you share the main categories that you see from your customers?
Yes, of course. So basically, we have three high-level customer groups, I would say. One is scientific research. We have a lot of great researchers out in the world. Over almost all the universities, over 2,000 universities, using eye tracking to understand human behavior in different settings. It could be everything from psychology, how do you interact with other people, how do you navigate spaces. Basically, the possibilities are endless on what you can study, because we use our eyes all the time, and so it's a very interesting thing for researchers to measure. And in this sense, that we do specified hardware and software for gathering and analyzing the data. And another great group we have is marketing research and user experience testing, because basically when you have some place you want to understand your customer, which anytime you have a product, you need to understand your customer. And getting the objective data of eye tracking, it's really a game changer compared to just asking them questions. Because if you ask them questions, you get biased answers. They think about what they do, they forget about what they saw, they don't know. Try to recall what you looked at when you walked in here. You're not going to be able to do it. But if you have worn eye tracker, we can understand exactly what you looked at, what information you perceived, and what you made your decision on. What guided you through going through a store, or guided you going through an airport. Did you see the signage? Did you understand it? Okay, good. Or if you didn't, okay, we can change it. So it really comes down to understanding your customers and being able to make critical decisions for your design, your product, or user experience. And then one third big thing we have is an enterprise training. So imagine you have your most experienced employee, 20 years, have been working on a production line or driving the truck. What is it that really makes this person the expert? I mean, it's very difficult for someone to explain exactly what they do. Maybe, I pick this object up, I look at this display, and I try to move this object here. But what do they actually pay attention to? What information do they process? Where do they look when they put down something on a line or do something with precision? So with eye tracking, you can really understand what goes on in the person's mind and try to quantify the tacit knowledge of people. And we have done this a lot in the real world with our eye tracking glasses. We can capture data from the real world. And now in VR and a great focus on enterprise training, I think it's just a really great tool to be able to simulate the training environments and be able to understand and improve the efficiency of training in VR. To take the next level from being more a nice gaming training tool to actually be quicker train the person that is in the VR world to make them faster go out to do the real work in a good way.
So you have the training, you have the scientific analysis, and do you also have, on the product side, we've been working with a lot of consumer goods companies, and do you have some specific example where you can remember, how the company were using eye tracking for decision?
Within a specific segment, shopper?
Within, product company like consumer goods analytics.
One very common thing that we do is, company use it for, is to understand what people actually find important when purchasing a product. What information do you need to display on your package design? I mean, is the ingredients, can you read the ingredients, or is it the pricing, or is it the logo or the taste? So understanding what is important for your product, what people actually look for. Those are the kind of things. I mean, we work a lot with global brands like Unilever, and they use eye tracking a lot then to try to optimize their products in order to make better products for their customers.
Thanks, Mattias. We'll probably come back to some of the scalability in a minute, and it's just making me think of one developer that that we've been discussing about eye tracking, and exactly in the training area that you mentioned. I'm going to mention then it's a startup. The Vietnam, they're basically developing enables A320 completely simulation, and they're developing that in Unity, 100%. And of course, when we were discussing about what the challenges were, the challenge is basically to make the simulation as real as real. So they face challenges into visual quality, but they also face challenging into the interaction. That's to say, which are nothing to do with VR. It's about, for example, I have to make sure that the interaction. So when the pilot is looking at controlling 1 meter, for example, particular indication, then it has to be real. And today it's not, because basically when they look, they need to say, yes, I've looked at it. There needs to be a confirmation. And of course, they want to use eye tracking to be able to know whether the pilot has looked at the right meter with the right attention and so on. How difficult do you think that will be for in the future for such developer to leverage on eye tracking with based on their Unity development?
It should be pretty straightforward. The difficulty is obviously for us is to unify APIs, right? But to implement specific APIs, so developers or hardware producers like yourself or Tobii create SDKs on top of Unity, and then they leverage some of the API that we have in the engine. So we have physics systems, for example, which will help with tracking whether people look, because usually you shoot a little ray to follow the eye or follow the head up at Tiana, but obviously the eye is much more precise. The legibility is a big problem in VR, which we have no matter what headset you use. So having, like you mentioned, foveated rendering implemented, the sooner the better, will help a lot in the simulation, making them meaningful and ensuring that the pilots can actually read those displays. So focusing rendering on where the ocular focus is going to be key for that. We are always trying to, so Unity is a closed source engine. Historically, we have a core which is C++ and obfuscated that you don't have access to, but we're moving things into what we call developer land, which is everything based in C#. That's the main language that we promote for the engine. The idea that we that historically the physics has been baked into the engine and now is moving outside with an open source implementation that's going to help also with those type of efforts where you can extend the base of our physics engine and then implement your own solutions on top of it that are going to be specific to the hardware that you are trying to use, and also the use cases, because there's a question of determinism, which is very important. So that's striking a simulation and being able to replay it with high fidelity or perfect fidelity. So that's something that we wanted to introduce for a long time, but it's difficult when you're not in charge of the libraries that you use. So historically it's been physics from NVIDIA. Now with our open source physics library, determinism is part of the release product. That's really one of the things. So it's platform specific right now. So if you develop on Windows, it's going to be deterministic on Windows. If you develop on iOS, it's going to be deterministic on iOS. The next step for us is going to make it deterministic across platforms, so you can have simulations with Tobii eye tracking or HTC on Android mobile and on Windows, and then make those able to sync all the data that comes from the sensors or the various devices across and replay them with high fidelity, regardless of the environment where you replay actually the simulations. So those are the type of things we're looking at. Forward looking is open the required APIs to the developers and the hardware vendors, and also providing the capacity of replaying the data in a consistent way.
Thanks, Jerome. So it's actually the toolbox is being built. Yeah, actually, it's very much in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the physics is already there. It's on the latest version of Unity for now. I don't know if it's going to be backported yet. And as usual, we have a package manager where you can download it, and it's quite seamless to integrate The rest for V8 is still, we're waiting for the APIs to settle a little bit from the hardware vendors like NVIDIA, AMD, etc., and then we'll start implementation, hopefully in this year. As the Pro I hits the market, that's probably going to boost a little bit the R&D focus.
Yeah, it's coming very, very, very soon. So that's great. Just so projecting ourselves a bit more, because now when we move into media, Admix and so on, so that's we're projecting number of products are in. It's a stable mass production, and then you get opportunity with this new technology to know where people are looking at. So probably as placing ad, it makes a lot of difference. What do you think that can open as an opportunity for you?
Yeah, so like I said, our mission is really helping developers, generate as much revenue as possible from their VR, AR apps, so that they can reinvest that into more content and create, more and more content, basically. And what we found is that actually eye tracking is going to really help us create a new business model. The way that advertising currently works on the web and on mobile, it's basically every time the ad is loaded, you generate a bit of money, right? It's called the impression model. But it doesn't take into account if you've actually seen the ad or not, or how long you've seen the ad. And therefore the payment is pretty low because the risk for the advertiser is high. They don't know if the ad is really going to be seen or not. So lately there's been some viewability criteria that have been added to this to charge a little bit more and guarantee views, but it's not very precise. And people are struggling with this on mobile and on the web because they have no way to really know if the ads have been seen. What's great about VR and AR in the future is that we will be able to know very, very precisely if that actually happened. So not only can we tell if the ad has been seen, but how long the ad has been seen for. So our vision is to move from a CPM model, which is cost per impression, to more like a cost per second, which will really take into account how much engagement that particular user has been engaged with that particular ad. So if you look at an ad for 10 seconds, obviously the brand is more valuable for the brand than if you looked only for a few seconds. And so by knowing that, the brands would be willing to pay a lot more money for these ads. And most of that money goes to the developers, which is great. It also means that the brands will use less spam. They will not need to put as many ads because they know that the ads are actually been seen. So for the general population, there'll be less ads, which is something that, I think everyone would say that it's a good thing. So by having better advertising, you also get less advertising. And we think that eye tracking is going to play a big, big part of it. The second thing I would say is about analytics that you've mentioned. It's, knowing where people are actually looking in the game. You can also optimize your advertising, saying that actually most people look on this side of the building, not on this side. So by placing the ad there, you can generate more revenue and therefore, increase your profit. So there's a lot of things, I think, from understanding the behavior of the users to create a new business model that it's really going to be disrupted by eye tracking.
Yeah, I think we didn't, generally speaking, realize that how important, how useful it could be for advertising. Now, when it comes to advertising, I think it's important that we all act responsibly, and then that is privacy by design, is something that needs to really come into most of the applications, so that, if you want to share, you share. If you don't want, you don't. So we ask ourselves, okay, what on our side, enabling that technology, what do we have to do for that? And I think the important that everybody is aware that when you develop an application, you have to plan for it, and you have to plan for consumers to be able to say, yes, I'm ready to share. No, I'm not ready to share. A bit like you do for your GPS position, for example. So for any of you, if you go to our develop site and you download the SDK for eye tracking, you will see that there is a specific terms, so that it's being explained to you as a developer, and you need to agree that you agree with those principles. That if you use the eye tracking, and it's going to be shared with server and so on, you need to get the end user approval for that. So we're really trying to to promote that positive ecosystem of a responsible development by explaining it to each developer right from the beginning through the access of the SDK.